Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I would like to welcome you to a very special 5-part podcast series on the Hughes Hubbard Reed Fall 2019 FCPA and Anti-Bribery Alert, which was recently released. In this 5-part podcast series, we take a look at 5 separate areas that are touched upon in the alert. They include an overview of the alert, the U.S. FCPA component, the French developments in anti-bribery, anti-corruption, enforcement, and compliance programs, multilateral development banks and their role in the fight against bribery and corruption, and we conclude with a review of anti-bribery enforcement in Brazil, along with Brazilian authorities' embracement of compliance. The alert is a significant piece of research, but more importantly than simply listing cases, it gives you a deep dive into the analysis of both anti-bribery, anti-corruption enforcement, but also policy announcements by regulators and other commentary from countries outside the United States about the state of compliance and where it's going forward. In this concluding episode 5, I visit with Salim Saud on developments in Brazil over the past year. This special series on the Hughes Hubbard Fall 2019 FCPA and Anti-Bribery Alert has been a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back for another episode in our overview of the 2019 Hughes Hubbard FCPA Alert. Today, I have with me Salim Saud. Salim is with Saud Advogados, a Brazilian law firm which is associated with Hughes Hubbard in Brazil. So Salim, first of all, thank you for taking the time to visit with me, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
One of the, I think, key themes from this decade of FCPA and greater anti-corruption enforcement has been the truly global nature in both the expansion of investigations and enforcement. And I would have to share with you that I think Brazil has really taken the lead in that, starting with Lava Jato, but also expanding beyond that. So every year, Salim, I'm quite intrigued to see where Brazil has been, where they have gone, and perhaps where they are going in the future. So with that somewhat long-winded introduction, I was wondering if I could ask you, what did you find to be some of the key anti-corruption enforcement highlights from Brazil over the past year?
Sure, of course. I think that the prominent role that CGU has taken, as you know, in Brazil, we had the NPF, the Public Prosecutor's Office, generally taking the lead in the enforcement arena. In the last year, we had a significant presence of the CGU in the enforcement scenario as well. CGU has entered into 11 leniency agreements, 5 of which in 2019. And also CGU was for the first time part of a settlement, of a global settlement. Until recently, we only had settlements that included the NPF and the U.S. authorities. This year was the Technip FMC settlement. We had CGU as a signatory of the agreement from the outset. And that's certainly a game-changing settlement because it shows not only that CGU is now ready to participate in the negotiations with the DOJ and the MPF, but it also shows that the market recognizes CGU's relevance and authority in entering into these settlements.
Salim, if I could perhaps turn the focus just a little bit to the following. What, if any, were setbacks to anti-corruption enforcement in Brazil in over the past year?
Sure. Last year, we had a decision from the Supreme Court that suspended the sharing of information between the agency formerly known as COAF. It's now known as the Unit of Financial Intelligence, and the investigation authorities. They basically have access to bank information from citizens, and that's information that is provided by the banks under anti-money laundering laws. And until recently, until July of this year, the information was shared with the investigation authorities. There was a decision by the Supreme Court in June that suspended that sharing of information, and that made a significant amount of the investigations be brought to a halt, because they were all based on information that was provided by this agency. Just recently, a few days ago, the Supreme Court decided on the case, and the decision was that the information can be shared. So even though there was this suspension in the investigations, the expectation is that all of those investigations that were suspended will now resume, and we will expect more enforcement in the next few years.
Salim, many of the listeners to this podcast are compliance officers in-house in corporations. So they're always eager to learn more and hear more about when the enforcement agencies, the CGU or the AGU or other Brazilian enforcement agencies, talk about corporate compliance programs and how they're going to be evaluated. I was wondering if you could talk about that in the context of corporate settlements under the Clean Companies Act, and perhaps where you see the importance of corporate compliance programs going forward.
Of course. The CGU has always provided some guidance to the market on what's expected from companies in terms of compliance programs. Just recently, about a year ago, they published a manual for assessment of compliance programs, and that manual is actually provides an Excel spreadsheet. And by the way, the folks at CGU, they have been improving their processes over the years, and they have standardized assessment methodology for pretty much everyone. So that gives a lot of certainty on how your program will be assessed by them. And they published this Excel spreadsheet with guidance, basically stating all the elements that they would like to see in a compliance program. And that is obviously meant to be used in settlements or in administrative proceedings. But that's a great guidance for all compliance officers that are setting up their programs or maybe just assessing the programs, just to see how the authorities would see them. And this has been a significant value for everyone that works in the field.
Salim, is that something that you're able to have discussions with your clients about, this guidance and how it could be put into effect, and more importantly, how the regulators will use, let me see if I can get your words, the assessment methodology if a company comes under investigation?
Yes, it's a very clear methodology for the assessment, and we actually perform that for clients preventatively. The law does not require you to have a compliance program, but it has a number of requirements should the companies opt to have a compliance program. And one of the elements of this that the law establishes is the periodic review of the program. So something that we do for some of our clients is basically review their programs based on this assessment spreadsheet published by the CGU, and that allows them to understand whether they would meet the requirements that the regulation expects to see, or whether they will be lacking in some of them. And to tell the truth, not all clients will want to have the investment to meet all of the requirements, but at least they will know where they'll have a a lower assessment, and there where they will have a higher assessment, and has been very helpful for compliance officers to understand if they really need to improve their program or whether their program meets most or at least some of the requirements.
Salim, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time, but I've been visiting today with Salim Saud with Saud Advogados in Rio, a law firm associated with Hughes Hubbard. We've been talking about the update to Brazilian not only enforcement, but also compliance programs as reflected in the Hughes Hubbard 2019 FCPA Alert. Salim, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I hope you enjoyed this episode in our special 5-part podcast series on the Hughes Hubbard Fall 2019 FCPA and Anti-Bribery Alert. I've linked to it in the show notes, and I would urge you to check it out, download it, and read it at your leisure. There's a lot packed into it. And of course, best of all is the price, which is it's free. The special 5-part podcast series has been a special presentation of the Compliance Podcast Network.